Hello and welcome to the Ask the Industry podcast, episode 94. I'm comedian Simon Caine, and for those of you new to the show, this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the worlds of stand-up, comedy, radio, and today, TV. Mark Talbot is the head of comedy development at Hat-Trick Productions. Hat-Trick Productions has been producing comedy since 1986. I was born in 1986. This company is as old as I am, and it has been producing programs that I watched when I was a kid. Mark's entire career almost has been spent at Hat-Trick Productions, and now he's the head of comedy development, having worked his way up from the office runner. He's part of the development team that looks for new opportunities in the UK, US, and video on demand market. He's always looking to create and develop and produce new shows for Hat-Trick. He has a host of credits to his name. I'll let you Google it if you want to have a look at it. He won a BAFTA for Best Comedy and Comedy Entertainment. On top of working in the TV industry, he also used to do stand-up comedy. He started a night back in 2000 called Sabotage, which still runs today, although a lot more intermittently since he got a family. We'll get into how the circuit and TV are connected, what Hat-Trick are doing to give chances to new writers and writers from underrepresented backgrounds, the chances of getting your thing made, how to send something into Hat-Trick and how not to send something into Hat-Trick, the impact on social media, on his job and on the shows that he produces, and so much more. This one, honestly, we're ending the year on a high, guys. This is such a good episode. I'm so proud of it. I'm going to just go straight into it because I'm pretty sure it's December when I put this out, and most of you just want to have a podcast so you don't have to talk to your families. So, all I'll say is if you're new here, please do hit the subscribe button. If you're old here, please do give us an honest review in iTunes. And either way, do consider joining the Facebook group. It is the best place to ask your questions to guests like Mark before I go and talk to them. So, if you join up, you'll find out when I'm having a guest on next, and then you can ask them questions via me. But without any more delays, this is Mark Talbot.
Yeah, if I had started today, would I have took the same route into television that I did? Yeah, probably. I wouldn't have gone to university because that just gave me loads of debt that I didn't need. And actually, a lot of people that I know in industry that started as runners, I mean, the first thing you're doing is making tea and photocopying stuff, and you don't need a degree to do that. And my brother's a doctor. He's got a degree that he's been doing for the last 10 years. That's because he wants to be a doctor, and he's going to be a consultant surgeon, and he needs a degree for that. Lawyers and accountants, I get it, but to work in TV, I wouldn't have done the degree. But would I have done the same route? Yeah, because everything that I did has gone towards helping me get to where I am now, I suppose. Running my own night meant that I was able to meet new comics, but also meet their agents as well. So I learned about that side of the business. Being a runner meant that I was able to learn about the industry and what the different people, what a producer is, what a director is, what a gaffer is, or a DOP, or a production design, or people in the office. Maybe, I've been at Hat-Trick, with the exception of a stint that I went away and worked at Objective for a bit. I've been at Hat-Trick pretty much all my working career. Would it have been beneficial for me to have gone elsewhere and freelanced on other shows? Possibly. I would have gained and seen how other production companies make their shows as well. But at the end of the day, we all kind of trying to do the same things, make good quality television. So yeah, I think I probably would have done the same route that I did.
And you mentioned like a lot of different roles there that you've kind of gone through. Could you explain for someone who doesn't know what the difference between, for example, a producer and an executive producer in practicality would do?
The best way to see it is that the producer is more hands-on, nuts and bolts, does the day-to-day work, crews up, gives all the notes on the script, does all the casting. What it says on the tin is the person making the show. The exec is the person who dips in every now and again and sprinkles their experience and intelligence on the project and probably takes a lot of the acclaim and does very little to deserve it. No, that's a bit harsh on exec producers, but you do get execs like that. And that's probably the difference between a producer and an exec, really. I'd say the producer is the nuts and bolts person, and the exec is there to sprinkle their experience, guide the producer to make sure that they're making the right, what they believe are the right decisions. And if, say, there's something that happens that's maybe out of the producer's comfort zone that the producer maybe can't deal with, like there might be talent issues or an issue with the control, the channel or financial things, maybe the exec can come in at that point and help out. But that, I think that's the fundamental difference between a producer and the exec. A producer can only really do one show at a time, whereas an exec can oversee many because they're dipping into different bits of a show.
We talked about this before we started, all sorts of misconceptions in the industry. A lot of people think that front-facing TV is very geared towards youth and youthful comedians and younger, if you like. Do you think that's the same behind the scenes? Do you think you have an advantage if you are younger in this industry as a producer or writer or any of those roles? Or do you think that's more... And do you agree with that at the front end?
So people on screen, if they're younger, have an advantage?
In the sense that a lot of people think that after a certain age, you're unlikely to, for example, get on live at the Apollo, or you're unlikely to be given as many opportunities because it's so, or seemingly so, youth-focused.
Define youth, and that was youth, not youth. I think, I don't know, like with the way the channels are set up at the moment, it feels like there are very specific channels for young writers and performers. BBC 3, E4, ITV2, Channel 4 have their BLAPS scheme. Channel 4 itself as well, young skewing with stuff like Flowers. But then I suppose, it's funny, I was talking to a BBC exec the other day, and they were saying that there was an Ofcom report, wasn't there, about the BBC needing to do more for its younger audience. But actually, what channels serve the older audiences? It's only really BBC One and ITV One. Channel 4, BBC 2. They feel quite youthful channels at that, in terms of what they're looking at. But then when you can contrast that with, say, BBC 3 or ITV 2, which feels younger still, I don't know. I'm 35 and I see myself as quite youthful. I'm sure if you asked my dad, who's 60, he'd probably say the same. So I think it's hard to define youth, isn't it, like that? But anyway, I'm not answering your question. Your question is it easier if you're younger behind the camera, in front of the camera? No, I think it's the same. I think it's still really hard to sell and produce good quality if you're in front of the camera, behind the camera, and whatever age you are, really. I don't think it matters.
I actually went down to I can't remember what they're called. They do it every 7 years, the BBC's, I've forgotten the name of it. The thing they do where they have people come down and they can say what they want to see with... was that not the one you were talking about?
No. Is that the Ofcom?
No, it's the BBC do these open things where you can go down and they'll ask you a load of questions about what you think about TV and reevaluate what they've been doing. I've forgotten the name of it.
Right.
But they're really interesting. And one of the things that came out of that was linked to the panel show thing where you've got to have a woman on, all of those. But it was also to do with giving more sort of up and coming, so that not necessarily youthful, but just up and coming people more opportunity.
Yes, I think that's really interesting, because I think there's a difference between someone being young and someone being inexperienced.
Definitely.
Because you could be 50 and have never had a TV show made, or be writing your first ever sitcom. And actually, we've had people come here as runners that have been in their mid-30s. They've decided, I don't want to work in the city anymore. I want to be a producer. I'm working with a couple of writers that used to work in the city, and I think they're in their 30s now. They've got a show in development with us in Channel 4, and they've got something in development at HBO. They've never written their own original show, but they've got something in development with HBO. And I think you're right. The hard part is giving the inexperienced people the opportunity, and I definitely think that is something, whether you're in front of camera or behind camera, is a hard thing to get through. Forget age, it's about inexperience or experience, definitely. Because
I'm presuming that once you've had a hit or once you've had a show, more people are likely to read a script than if you've not had one.
Yeah, definitely. 2 years ago, if you're Phoebe Waller-Bridge and you're sending scripts to people, they're probably not reading them. I think that they're definitely reading them now. And I think that there's plenty of examples of that throughout the industry. If you've had some success, and define success, if you've had a TV show made, that is such an incredible achievement, really, to have got through the thousands of people that write scripts, that go to agents, that go to producers, that then get whittled down to then go to channels, that then get whittled down from all the producers to the 2 pilots maybe that year that Channel 4 are making, to then get one of them made into a full-blown series. That's an amazing journey, and you've learnt so much. You're now experienced, aren't you, to do something else. So I don't think you're right. I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's about giving those people that don't have the experience the chance to do it.
I think also a lot of people perceive the fact that because there's more channels now, both old school channels as in TV, as well as online, there should be more opportunities, because logically there's more slots.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Are there more opportunities? Yes, there are more places to make content for, but I was also watching a documentary this last night or the other night that said that the population of the planet in the last 30 years has gone from 2 billion to 7 billion people. So whilst there might be more channels, there are more people. So I suppose Yes, and when I was 15, 16 and sending my CV to the production companies that made comedy for British television, it was very easy. I wrote 3 letters, one to Hat Trick, one to Talkback and one to Tiger Aspect, because they were the only places in the mid-90s, early 2000s that were making comedy. 20 years later, when I have a runner sit down opposite me and say, hey, I'm thinking, how do I get into TV comedy? Who should I approach? I give them like a list of 10 producers that I'm friends with that work at 10 different indies and say, there's 10, that's a good start. There's probably another 50 you can approach. And I think there's there must be, I don't know how many indies there are, but there's easily 100, 200 indies now making content for the channels and YouTube. And so there are certainly more opportunities out there, but there are more people doing it. And back in the day, if you look at the comedies that were on, they were either made by the BBC or Tiger or Talkback or Hat Trick. Whereas now when you look at the indies that are being made, sometimes it's made by 3 indies. There's a lot of production companies now, but I mean, how many of them are production companies and how many of them are an actor and their mate?
Yeah, but
which is more the American model, and the American model is that a lot of there aren't really producers per se. In America, it's more an executive producer for hire on a show, or a piece of talent like an actor or an actress and their friend who's an executive producer working alongside them.
You've referenced other companies being indie. How do you define an indie versus... So you wouldn't obviously class Hat Trick as an indie then?
Yeah, Hat Trick's an
indie. Oh, you
would?
Yeah. So what isn't an indie then? What kind of company wouldn't be classed as an indie in your mind? Is it just anything that isn't like an in-house thing at a broadcast?
Yeah, so all independent production companies are basically everything apart from BBC Studios, although I suppose now that is an indie, isn't it? It is BBC Studios. So yeah, all production companies are indies, unless they're classed as a label, which is a term, when you're a label underneath an indie. But there are super indies. So there are All 3 Media and Endemol, ITV Studios. They own several production companies. So what is a true indie? Again, these are all terms that I haven't made up. These are all terms that are written in broadcast magazines, so we as the industry can understand them. A true indie would be something like Hat Trick, which is set up by Jimmy Melville 30 years ago, and it's owned by Jimmy Melville still 30 years later. Somewhere like Tiger was that until it was bought by Endemol Shine, I think, own it now, don't they? So that's what indies are until they're bought by super indies, and they still remain indies, but they're just under the umbrella of a super indie, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like when Unilever buy a brand and put it under there.
And then it's all of a sudden it's under Unilever. Yes, yeah.
Quotas are something that sort of get bounced about, and we were sort of talking about that a bit with the BBC, kind of having to work around certain public opinions and public tastes. How much do they... Because you guys essentially get ideas in, decide that they're worth making, and then I assume pitch them to channels before you've really made like a pilot, because you kind of want to know that they want it before you do that. How much do you have to keep track of, for example, public taste or a channel's, should we say, I can't think of how to phrase it, like how a channel's working around the public and their own audiences? Or do you just go, that idea is great, we'll find a channel for it?
Yeah, I mean, each channel has their own wants and needs. We might get told BBC One are currently looking for a studio sitcom, for example. So we know that we can then be quite prescriptive when we go to agents and writers and say, hey, do you have any ideas for a BBC One studio sitcom? Because we know BBC One want to do one of those right now. We also believe, when we get an idea come through, if we really think it's a great idea and I don't know, it's a show about a man. It's a show about an up and coming stand-up comedian who does podcasts with non-influential people in the industry. If someone pitched us that idea and we absolutely think it's brilliant and worth it, we would take it under our wing and develop it and then take it to the channel.
Have you seen through this already? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. I know what's going on here.
This isn't going out.
No. So yes, there are so much quotas. Equally, for example, if someone was to pitch us an idea about a guy that runs a paper office in Slough, we might not do it because we know it's been done before very successfully. But it might be great writing, but we just wouldn't do it. So sometimes you have to accept that, yes, there are quotas and there are needs for things that the channel wants, but sometimes you've got to go off your instinct and think, we've got to take a risk on this. This is worth taking a chance. Right now, what are people looking for? Diversity on screen and off screen, but in terms of the ideas that are coming through, I think there's a lot of people now trying to find diverse and underrepresented writers and performers that can go on television. So we're keeping our eye out for those types of ideas. But equally, if a great script comes in from a white middle class man, we'd just be interested in that as well. If it was funny and distinctive and all the other superlatives that it would need to be to convince a channel to go for it, really.
Something I've noticed, especially over in America, but a bit over here, is the increase in diversity in writing, both behind and in front of the camera, as well as female writers coming through. And I mean, is that reflective in like you're getting more unsolicited scripts from those areas, or I mean, do you accept unsolicited scripts, or would you only go through agents? How does that work from your end?
So to answer your first question, the unsolicited scripts that I receive are the same as what I've always received, which actually aren't very diverse. Then, you know, young men have decided to write a comedy about what it's like living with your parents again, or something like that, you know, which is an idea I've seen lots of, you know what I mean? But do we accept unsolicited scripts? No. But and I shouldn't say this because I'll obviously end up getting deluge of scripts, but like when people send me the scripts, I do read them and get back to people. But no, officially Hat-Trick doesn't accept unsolicited scripts, even though I just said I do read them. So no, I don't read unsolicited scripts.
Just for heads up, I won't be giving anyone whose email.
No, good.
Don't bother DMing me about that. Yeah. I know what will happen. I'll get 30 comedians the day this goes up going, I've listened up to 10 minutes in.
Yes, yeah. I believe he does read unsolicited scripts. Can we send them?
No, I'm sure you've got an info at. Send it at that. And if
send it to reception@hattrick.com.
There you go.
There's the email address. Yeah, you know, the diversity thing is interesting. I don't, you know, what we're talking about, whether I get them from agents as well. Yeah, I mean, a lot of agents are sending us writers that are, you know, from more diverse and underrepresented backgrounds, definitely. And it seems to be the thing that everyone's writing at the moment, you know, everyone wants at the moment, channels-wise.
I'm trying to work out whether it's chicken and egg, whether the channels have started showing more of that, so more agents are getting more of that to send you, or whether you were being sent more, so you pitched more of that stuff, and then it started that ball rolling. Do you think you could put a sort of your finger on which one started which, or whether it was public opinion that started the whole? You know, what was that for you? What
came first, diverse writers or broadcasters asking for diverse writers?
Yeah,
I mean, I think
or them showing a diverse writer and it going well, and then them thinking, right, we can take risks on more of them because we haven't in the past, or we haven't taken as much risk in the past.
Yeah. I think the writing's always been there. I've read a lot of, you know, in the time that I've been developing comedy, I've read lots of work from underrepresented writers, and when we say diverse, that's not just from BAME writers, writers that are homosexual, writers that are from the north of England, writers that are working class, writers that whatever is not seen that much on television. There's always been those scripts coming through to me, and I think what's happened now though is, yes, we're seeing a few more things on television, not loads, but a bit more, and as a result of that, yeah, maybe agents are sending more in, but I'd say I've always received those works. It's just been harder to get them away, whereas now it feels like there is a bit more of a call to arms to do diverse work. But, you know, diversity is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we live in London, in a very metropolitan, cosmopolitan, all the politans city of the world. And, yeah, I'm not from London. I'm from Lincolnshire. And if you go to Lincolnshire, you'll find that it's not massively diverse. And so, as I'm in this conversation with a friend, you know, we absolutely love Atlanta, the Donald Glover show. Who's loving Atlanta in Lincolnshire? Not many people, I imagine. And that's not a criticism of Lincolnshire. It's a great place to grow up. But it's still a very niche piece of programming, as brilliant as it is and as amazing as it is at the Emmys. And I think it does at the Emmys, and it does for Donald Glover's career. He's now in Star Wars and the like. It's great. You know, there has to be those shows, and it's probably my favourite show of the last 12 months. But there also has to be the more broad comedies that exist to serve the country, because, and this is no, what I'm about to say now is no inclination as to whether I voted to leave or remain in the EU, because I was actually in Spain at the time and couldn't vote. But Britain is predominantly is not very diverse, I don't think, if you actually do, and that's a massive sweeping statement. But if you go to most of England and look around England, it's not very diverse, which is a shame, and it should be more. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be making those programmes, but it just feels like it's, I just feel like diversity is a very hard thing to get right, because you're always going to get people that don't want to watch those things. It's not a reason to not make it, but
you've also got a sort of other issue at the top end of it, where because it's not come through as easily for a while, the people at the top end of it, and this is no reflection on you, are a lot of white men in a lot of instances. So it's like your, first of all, personal taste, but also your historical taste,
yes,
and your knowledge of the subject will come into play, in the sense that you might get an amazing script that an agent who's very familiar with that area will love, that you might just not know about. I mean, I've had that before. I've listened to a podcast or something, and I just haven't known anything on that subject. And at the end of it, I really loved it. But at the start, I've been like, this probably isn't for me. I'll give it another 5 minutes. I'll just see if I'm going to get into it or not. And then by the end of it, you might have learned something or you might have not. But I suppose you're a business. This is a business. And as a result, you might not have, 2 hours a day to read 50-page scripts that might, get your interest near the end because you like the writing and not the subject matter. And, there's kind of a top-down issue as well as an upward issue, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, 100% agree. But that doesn't apply to me. Yes.
Again,
no.
I haven't brought you here to have a go.
No, I know. I know. You should call me out on a lot of things. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think what I would say in terms of if you're talking about, this podcast is about me, so my personal taste. Some of my favourite shows have been Atlanta, or Nurse Jackie, or The Sopranos, or Breaking Bad, or Eastbound and Down. But I am not a poor black man growing up in Georgia, Atlanta. I'm not a sort of painkiller addicted nurse in New York. I'm not a gang boss mafia member in New Jersey. Yet I absolutely love those shows. And I think you can develop and produce shows that aren't you, because if that was the case, every single channel that was on television that was broadcast would just have shows about white private school educated 30-40 somethings, and I think that is still the case. Like, if you look at what predominantly gets made and who's commissioning it, but it's, how do you change? It's time. We have to give it time, don't we? Maybe we're at that place where things are changing. And there's someone in our team who shall remain nameless, but she often says, will we look back in 20 years' time at this era and go, do you remember that time where we tried to make loads of shows about transgender people and it was really patronising and they weren't very, or we tried to do loads of shows about diversity and it just was so wrong. And like that, what I think is very interesting is why can't we just make a comedy show that's about, like, take Nurse Jackie, for example. Would it have made any difference if Edie Falco had been played by an Asian actress or a black actress or a transgender actress? Like, yes, it would have, because it would have made the show something else, but it shouldn't have mattered. It could have been anyone could have played that part. Go on.
I was going to say, I think people do that now. Some people look back on shows from the 80s or the 70s and go, I can't believe they would put out a thing that would, just insult mother-in-laws for half an hour or whatever the thing would be. But I think I always look back at myself a year ago and go, you fucking idiot. I've been told by a lot of people, you shouldn't look back and have a go at yourself because it's stupid. But I think if you're not doing that, you haven't improved as a person. You haven't pushed yourself forward. And I think as an individual, on an individual level, you can do that within a year. But I think in a business, especially
in an industry,
especially when you're dependent on other industry people to do the same thing, it's obviously going to take longer to turn that ship around.
Definitely.
And and that's not me, giving you a pass or having a go at you. I just think a lot of people kind of will see the end result of something that's coming out now and not take into account that's been in development for maybe 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, why aren't they producing more of these? They're not thinking, well, hang on, that's taken 5 years to produce.
Yeah.
Of course it's not going to immediately overnight happen.
Yeah, definitely. This is the mega extreme example, and I am in no way, I want your listeners to know, comparing British television production to apartheid. But I remember being in Cape Town 3 years ago. This is a country that only in 1994 ended apartheid, and yet all the people eating in the restaurants were white and all the staff were black. And I remember saying to my wife, like, this is so interesting being here, because this is something that is taking time to change. And this was 94, so we're talking 23 years since the end of apartheid. Now, again, apartheid and diversity on British television are two very different things, but it's the same it's the same it's the same argument, really. It will take time for us to find that balance and go, right, well, we don't have to make loads of shows about transgender people, because actually there aren't loads of transgender people, or we found the right balance now, and we can just cast transgender people in a show, and they can play the lead character, and it doesn't matter that they're transgender.
But I think also it comes down to a generational thing as well, because there are a lot of viewpoints that are still around that, and a lot of uncomfortable feelings around, if you saw a transgender person, for example, maybe playing the lead character, there would be, I don't know. I mean, do you get to know about Ofcom complaints? Like, if you made something and one person, let's not say Lincolnshire, let's pick somewhere else, but someone just sort of went, I don't like that. Would do Ofcom, if you got one, do Ofcom just forward you an email and say, this person's had a bit of a problem with the casting or the lighting or whatever? How does that work with you?
Yeah, I mean, usually what happened, and I've had a lot of, on something like Revolting, where we made a sketch called The Real Housewives of ISIS, we got a lot of complaints for that. So
I remember that, it went viral. It was
yeah. So with something like that, then what will happen in that instance is Ofcom, the BBC will receive an amount of complaints, and if the BBC receive a certain amount, or Ofcom get that, then the Ofcom will talk to the channel about it. So I don't see, and look, I don't see this exact complaints. But sorry, what was the question?
It was just how you get that feedback, or how historically, because obviously now there's social media and things like that you'll get feedback from. But I wondered how historically you'd get feedback if people did have a problem with something that you'd created.
Yeah, I suppose we would get told it from the BBC if the BBC felt, or the Channel 4, whoever, didn't feel like they could answer it in defence of their own, because at the end of the day, the programme is theirs. We make it for the channel, so it's the channel that has to deal with the complaint. But if the channel feel like that we've done something that we shouldn't have done, so we feature someone who didn't want to feature, we have to prove that they signed a release form. So if they made a complaint to the BBC or Channel 4 or whoever saying, we didn't want to feature in the show, I didn't sign a release form, the channel would come to us and go, did they not sign a release form? And we'd go, yes, they did, look, or no, they didn't, we're in trouble. But taste, what offends people, I mean, that's so hard to define, isn't it? Like, what is someone's taste? What do you get offended by? I mean, the Great British Bake Off offends me. But
every time I say that to someone, they're like, "No, you just don't get it." I get it. It's a baking show.
Yeah. But I'm also like intelligent enough to know that there are other channels to watch, and I don't have to watch the Great British Bake Off. So watch something else. What amazes me is when people complain about a show that they don't like, and I think, why are you even watching it then? If you don't like it, just get on with your life and do something nice and loving and kind. Don't write a letter to Ofcom or the BBC. Yes, we live in a democracy, but go and do something nice. Go and help the homeless. You know what I mean? Like, do something good rather than sitting there whinging about, yes, but my licence fee pays for this. Well, your licence fee also pays for many other channels and many other things, and a BBC News website and lots of other great things that you can spend your time in, enriching your life. If you really need to complain about something that you didn't like from a taste, and this is from a taste point of view, I don't know, that says more about that individual than the show.
For me, I take that on a case by case though, because as much as I'd love to say a blanket statement of do something nice rather than pass negativity on, I do understand that if, for example, there was a show that portrayed a certain group of people in a bad light and normalised the idea of something to do with that group that's not positive in the long term, I could understand why they would want to make a complaint. But outside of that, I wouldn't make a complaint about Great British Bake Off just because I don't like it.
No, but hopefully,
and I'm sure there people are.
Yeah, but hopefully you're a more sane person, maybe not. Chris Morris, Brass Eye Paedophile Special.
Loved it.
Amazing show.
Yeah.
And how many people complained about that and thought it was a real show about paedophiles? How many people complained about our show of making a sketch that was 2 minutes long, that was about women that were being brainwashed online to go and fight for ISIS in Syria? We received complaints saying that people couldn't believe that the BBC had commissioned a series called The Real Heart. They hadn't commissioned a series. It was a 2-minute sketch in a whole series called Revolting. When people are making complaints that don't stack up, then you just have to, you just have to keep doing what you're doing and hope that you don't make anything that is actually worthy of being complained about. But like I said, we do live in a democracy and people are entitled to complain, and I suppose there is they obviously feel there's a valid reason for them complaining, so...
It's a knee-jerk reaction in a lot of cases, and we'll get onto social media and how that's impacted you in a bit. But I thought while we were on that kind of train of thought of commissioning and scripts and things like that, obviously there's an ideal between you getting a script and having something made, and then there's the reality of what you have to go through. Could you, like, for a listener who has maybe never had any interaction with a channel or a production house, run through what, if like, for example, you were just giving like a little talk where they just went, well, we get a script and then we do this and then we do this, that's the ideal. But in reality, we get a script, we have to pitch all that kind of stuff. Could you just run through what that would be like if someone did send in a script that you liked?
Yeah, so the ideal and the reality. Yeah. So the ideal is you send me a script, I read it and like it, I send it to a broadcaster, they read it and like it.
Just one, you'd send it to the one you know, or you would pick a few and send it out?
For the sake of this argument, let's just say we send it to one.
I'll be quiet. Go on.
Yeah. We send it to the BBC, and the BBC read it and like it, and then we go and have a meeting with them, and they say, this is great, let's do a pilot. We then make a pilot of the show. They like the pilot, and then we then make a series of the show, and then we make the show, and then the show does incredibly well and wins loads of BAFTAs and everyone watches it, and then they make a second series and a third series, and by then we've already sold the rights to America, so they're making an American version of the show, and then you're winning loads of Emmys, and then you're in America and you're writing a film version of your show, and you're a multimillionaire and you don't have to live in Lincolnshire anymore. That's the ideal situation. The reality...
Before you do that, can I ask what the timeline would be like ideally in your head? Because obviously...
Well, if you're a writer and you're in need of some money, that timeline of from sending me the script to the BBC, making a series would be... What's a fair timeline or something like that? 18 months? From the moment you press send on your email to me to the moment you get told we're making a series of your show. 18 months. So in 2 years' time...
You wouldn't be paid for 18 months?
You would receive a small amount of money potentially for rewrites and stuff like that.
But not enough to live on, essentially.
If you could live on £2,000 a year, yes.
Maybe in Lincolnshire.
Yes. The reality is that you send me a script and I think that there's some potential in it, so I get you in for a meeting, and then we maybe make some tweaks to your script, and you work out whether you think I'm a decent enough person that you want to keep working with, or you take it to another production company. But you've decided, actually, no, I'm going to give this guy a chance, so I'll stick with him and we'll develop it together. Hat-Trick or the production company will then option the idea off of you, which means that Hat-Trick own it for a year and work with you on it, to sell it. Once we're in a stage where we're happy with it, we will send it to a channel. In that time, we might have developed it here by doing an internal read-through with some actors or maybe members of staff just to hear the script read aloud. We then send it to the BBC. The BBC read it, but they've got something very similar in development, which they didn't tell me about when I originally mentioned this idea of yours to them. So that's not going to work for them. So we then send it to Channel 4. But Channel 4 have just got a new commissioner coming in, or a new head of comedy, or a new channel controller or whoever, so they can't make any decisions for the next 3 months. You need to wait a few more months, then you get some feedback.
Why can't they make decisions?
Because there's no boss there, so they're waiting for the
person
chain
to leave.
Of command.
Right.
Yeah.
So when a commissioner starts, they have to wait a few months to get into the rhythm of it before they can even make a decision.
Well, when a commissioner starts, they might have other things on the slate that needs.
Right.
Yeah. So eventually Channel 4 read it and actually like it. So then we go in for a meeting with Channel 4, and then they give us some notes, and they could vary from here's a couple of notes to actually could your lead protagonist not be English, and could he be based on the moon? I mean, it's never really as mad as that, but anyway, we then develop it with Channel 4. Channel 4 then maybe give us a bit of money to put on a read-through or film a taster tape. If they like that, then they might commit to a pilot. Then we make a pilot, and then when we're making a pilot, everything goes well, and then the channel watches it and they really like it, but then your lead actor drops out of committing to a series, so then you're trying to find a new actor to be in the series, and then Channel 4 say we don't want to do it because we only want to do it when the actor was attached to it. So you then take it to Sky, and Sky say, oh, actually, yeah, we quite like this script. Maybe we can do a pilot of it. So we do a pilot for Sky, and this has been about 2-3 years now, and then you make a pilot for Sky. They have some notes on it. They say, but we're not quite sure about some of the casting, could you do another pilot? So you make another pilot, and you then make a pilot with Sky, and then they commission a series, and then you make a series, and no one watches it, the critics hate it, and it gets panned, you don't get a second series. And that's been 4 years of your life. That's a good scenario because you got your show made. But obviously it's not the best case scenario. What you want is you want to be the person that creates the next Office or the next Catastrophe or the next, There are many ways to the next Office and the next Catastrophe, but a massive part of those routes are luck and timing. And when the Office first came out, no one watched it. And we forget that the Office was on television and no one watched it, and then a few months later the BBC re-showed it on BBC Two and everyone watched it and were like, wow, this is brilliant, what's this new comedy? Well, it'd been on before, and then what happened. So you have to have a lot of luck on your side as well when doing this stuff, and you have to be incredibly persistent and incredibly tenacious, and if you believe in an idea you have to keep believing in it. Matthew Weiner wrote Mad Men when he was working on Sopranos. No one wanted it, HBO turned it down. 7 years later, AMC decided to buy it. It became Mad Men. You have to just be persistent, keep going for it, believe in your idea, really.
Would you ever, see this is the thing that, and this might be my DIY mentality kicking in here, but would you ever upload, so say you've made a trailer for Channel 4, or sorry, a pilot for Channel 4, and they've said no, we wanted that actor, whatever. Would you ever upload, or would you be able to upload that to YouTube to see if enough people were interested in it, that then when you went to the next channel you could go, we don't have to make you a new pilot, we've got this one, look, it's got 300 million views and everyone underneath is loving it, would you like to make it into a proper thing for TV? Or are these pilots having to be hidden because of legal something?
The pilots are hidden because of legal something. Right. Basically, we've never put a pilot up on YouTube and just said, hey guys, do you like this? What do you think? Because there are, the pilot is owned, the person that paid for the pilot owns it. So you can't upload the property of Channel 4 or Sky or BBC to YouTube without their permission, and they're not going to give you the permission to do that. When your show, if your pilot gets turned down by the broadcaster that funded it, it goes into what's called turnaround, which means that you can try and sell it somewhere else, but you have to pay those costs potentially back to the channel. You can't just upload it to YouTube and go, hey guys, what do you think of this? Because I'm sure that there are loads of pilots made by really, really great pilots with lots of famous people in now. Pilots that probably had Benedict Cumberbatch in before he was Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah. And I'm sure people would love to see those shows, but you can't because they're owned by someone and a broadcaster doesn't want you to see them, which is a shame because it would be an interesting way, it would be a democratic way of certainly finding out if you made a pilot and it got turned down and then you put it on YouTube and 300 million people watched it and there was all positive comments, and that would be a hard one for then the channel to say no to, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's like, I don't want to compare the two, but Lego.com have a great section where if you've made your own version of something, right, you can upload it and then people can vote for it to become a real kit, if you like. Right, okay. Which I quite like as a system because that's how they got the Ghostbusters fire station. It was a fan project and then they went, we'll fucking make this. We've got to pay them, a cut to it because they have to. But we're like, everyone seems to love this. They did it with Shaun of the Dead, but they said that it was too graphic or something for Lego. And it was... Wow. It wasn't graphic, it just had a baseball bat which had a little bit of blood on it they'd made and stuff. It was cute.
That's a good way of doing it, yeah. Amazon make pilots, and then the ones that the audience like the most and give the best feedback on, Amazon commission into full series. The BBC Three make their feeds, BBC Three feeds, I think they're called Slices now, but... they are pilots that if people like lots of, they'll commission one of. And Josh was a pilot on that strand. What else have they done? People Just Do Nothing was a pilot on that strand. And so that's works for like Amazon and BBC Three online platforms. But I don't know if all the channels could do that.
What I find really interesting as well is I mean, and I'm talking to quite a few writers about this, and if they've got like a rate that they'll pay you for the series or for the cost of creating a pilot or whatever, when they put it out on TV, so let's say Channel 4, they get paid for adverts. That's how they make their money, basically. And yet, if, for example, you put it on a slot that would naturally get more viewers, because it's the dinner time that most people will be watching it, you don't get paid any more, even though they'd make more on the adverts by that programme being there. Do you think that's a system that will change in the future with, basically online being funded by adverts as well, and them getting paid per view rather than just getting paid because it's online?
Just explain it to me again.
So if I put a thing on YouTube and it gets 300 million views, right, I would get paid per view from YouTube. Whereas if I sold you a show and you put it on at 7:30 in the evening and it got 300 million views, I wouldn't get paid any different than if they put it on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it got 500,000 views.
Right. I hear what you're saying. So as a writer, should you be entitled to more money if your show gets more viewers?
Or as a production house? Like, surely you're creating something that is helping them sell an advert easier,
yes,
and making them more money.
Well, it kind of does work like that already. So, for example, if you were a writer who wrote a daytime TV drama, you're not going to get as much as if you're a writer who writes a 9 o'clock BBC One Sunday night drama, because more viewers will watch the Sunday night drama than the budget for the shows are different.
Right.
And so I imagine that the writing fee for them. So best example is like radio. So Radio 4 obviously pay a lot less for writers to write a script than BBC One pay, because Radio 4 gets less listeners than BBC One gets viewers. At least I think it does. It should do. I don't know.
You've not written for Radio 4 then?
No. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I suppose that's a question about how it changes in the future. But ultimately, are Netflix going to pay someone more money? The way Netflix will do it is Netflix will pay you more money if you're more famous. If you're Jerry Seinfeld, you're getting 100 million for three whatever it is, stand-up specials. If you're Mark Talbot and you've never made any comedy for Netflix before, then they're not going to pay you $100 million to make it.
Do you know what I love? Is like, I bet you any money there is a number of people listening to this going, Mark, like, yes. as in they'll be trying to place you on the circuit.
Yes,
and try to do it that way.
Yeah, hopefully. Mark Talbot. Oh yeah, not Jerry Seinfeld. Yes, yeah. So yeah, I think the answer to your question is you do get paid proportionally, but there's less money in daytime because there's less people watching. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, let's talk about your live work or your because you don't gig now at all. Is that right? Or
I haven't done for a few years actually. No.
Do you still run Sabotage?
We did up until the summer, but we've stopped doing it now. I mean, it's always there and always something that we want, looking for venues to put it on. We might do something in the new year in quite an amazing venue, which I'm not going to tell you about, because if it doesn't happen, then
that's fine.
I'll just look like I'm talking shit. I love it. I don't think there's nothing I get more excitement from than doing live comedy or seeing live comedy, because in terms of comedy, obviously there's lots of things in my life I get more excitement from. But in terms of like I went through that process with you about how to sell a TV show. Like that process can take 3-4 years in some instances, 7 years for Mad Men. The moment you stand on stage and hold a microphone in your hand, you're not waiting 7 years for a laugh. Well, unless you're very bad, you're getting an instant reaction from an audience and you're finding out what they think about that joke there and then, which is amazing. And that feeling is fantastic.
Yeah, and so do you want to explain what Sabotage is, just for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so Sabotage is a comedy night that I set up in 2006. It was when I was a runner here, and I just started a hat trick as the runner. I wanted to start doing... What I wanted to do was I wanted to start getting to know other comics on the circuit and their agents, and just starting, introducing myself to people that didn't really know me, and running a live comedy night, because I absolutely love comedy. So, or at least I did back then when I was less cynical. And yeah, it was great. We had loads of new acts on at the time who were new acts, like Cardinal Burns or Jack Whitehall or Sarah Millican, and Stephen Merchant came down it a couple of times. He wasn't new at the time, but it was great to have people like that, and it just snowballed and became a really popular night that we did in East London. And then eventually we did a couple of series on Radio 4 Extra that we recorded at Hoxton Hall, and that was good fun. And then we recorded a series at the Backyard in Bethnal Green. did a few, continued to run it in Bethnal Green for a year, and then recently did it at the Bill Murray in Islington, did it there once a month. And then we had so I was the resident host of the night, and I would book the acts, but then eventually it became something that Hat Trick would sort of run, and Hat Trick booked with my help, Hat Trick would book the acts. And then eventually when we did it at the Bill Murray, it was just a charity night that we did, and I didn't have anything to do with the comics booking them or performing it. I was just an audience member that just enjoyed coming down and watching it. And Kiri Pritchard McLean was the resident MC, and she was fantastic. And we had different acts. Kitson came down and did it, and who else do we have? And John Kearns, all like the sort of brilliant stand-ups that are out there at the moment. So yeah, it was. Hopefully we'll bring it back next year and in its new venue, and it'll be great. And yeah, I mean, I love it because we see new acts, we see established acts.
Does that help you discover new writers, or because when you watch someone live, it's such a different skill to writing for a scripted comedy show, for example. How, when you see someone live, are you able to extrapolate, or even hypothetically extrapolate, they'll be good at writing for this show, or they'll be good on acting in this?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends. If they're stand-ups, if someone's a stand-up, you can kind of tell from their performance style if what they're going to be like. Maybe it's a good question, because I'm trying to think, who have I worked with off the back of Sabotage? It's probably the best place to start, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the answer is probably more sketch acts. Tried to develop something with Seb and Dustin from Cardinal Burns after I saw them as Fat Tongue doing our night. A lot of stand-up comics are really good comics, and therefore good personalities to have on. Say, have I got news for you? But then there are other stand-ups that are also like Aisling B, for example, who's a really good actress as well and wants to do acting, and as well as stand-up and writing, and it has lots. There are other people, like I remember when Michael McIntyre was just starting out, and I remember Sabotage just started, and I said to him, "Hey, have you got any sitcoms you want to write?" And he said, "No, I just want to present shows and be on panel shows." So it's also about what those comics want to do. And if someone like Aisling wants to do stand-up and be an actress and write, or someone like Holly Walsh is same thing, then that's great. And if someone wants to just be a stand-up comic and not work on TV, that's also fine. Or if, like Kitson, or if someone wants to be on panel shows and just do that, then that's also fine. I suppose what I'm looking for is those people that first of all make me laugh, and then it's a conversation after that where you say, do you have any sitcom ideas, or the world that you're describing, that could be an interesting world for a sitcom character, not a stand-up comic in a sitcom, but you've just talked to me about, for example, what it's like to be a first-generation immigrant, or you've just talked to me about what it's like to be pregnant at the age of 30, or I don't know, whatever the comic is talking about on stage. Well, there could be an interesting sitcom in that. And then what we talk about, in the past we've tried to develop stand-ups and pair them up with writers. Mike Wozniak, for example, I remember when he first started, absolutely, I used to go and watch him all the time, absolutely loved him, and we talked about an idea, paired him up with a writer that had more sort of worked with Hat Trick and had lots of sort of credits and established writer, and tried to develop a show with him. So sometimes it's about pairing people up as well. We're currently developing something with Richard Gadd that we've paired him up with a writer. You might sometimes see something in someone, but they might need a bit of help. And if you look at the sort of best comedy creations, like Alan Partridge, Coogan had that great character, but he worked with lots of brilliant writers. Ricky Gervais had that character, and he worked with Stephen, and they created The Office. So Sacha Baron Cohen, team of writers, all those great characters, they have a team of writers. So there's no reason why we can't go and watch a stand-up comic and go, oh, they'd be brilliant, but they might need a bit of help with the writing, so let's pair them up with this writer or that writer.
It was only a question I was thinking about, because before we started recording, we were talking about Kitson,
yes,
and I love his work,
yeah,
and how you said you'd love to have him on a show. Again, because he's not done TV for so long, and by his own admission, because he doesn't want to, not because he couldn't, for example. It's sort of like, with someone like that, or even with a newer person, how do you... What would you even do? You know what I mean? Like, where would you put someone who's been live for so long in a scripted medium that would have to be edited? Or would it be something like, or would you think there are more markets for, like, Stuart Lee's, for example, where he just did stand up and had those sort of cutaway things? It's interesting to me how your mind works when you're sort of watching someone live, thinking about how you can edit them in a weird way, like how you can put it on a screen rather than, you know.
Yes, yeah. I suppose that the first thing I'm thinking is this a funny character? Does this person have a persona that I'm interested in and that is funny? I mean, that's what it boils down to. And if there's something that I like in them that makes me laugh and often makes me think as well, and that's, you know, I think when I remember seeing Ramesh Ranganathan years ago and thinking there's a very unique and interesting persona on stage. I'm sure one day he'll have his own sitcom, and I'm pretty sure that they're making one now for Sky. Yeah, I think it's about that on-stage persona. And I'm not going to go into specific examples as much as I'd love to, and as much as the people listening would love me to go into it all, because I know how all this comedy but like there are other examples of sitcoms with, you know, a sort of famous stand-up comedian at the heart of them that just don't work. Not everyone's Seinfeld, are they? You know, so yeah. Is it an interesting character, and is there scope for a world for that character to live in that would be, you know, quite interesting? So,
if, for example, you were an inexperienced writer and you didn't want to send you an unsolicited script because you don't read, yes. Yeah. Would you accept an invite to come watch someone live because they want you to know that maybe not for a project, just so that you know that person exists as a character? Yeah.
We get invited to lots of shows.
Is that mainly by agents doing showcases, or is that by indie people, like individuals?
Both, yeah. Some people will email us and say, "Hey, I'm doing this show. Do you want to come and watch it? Is it Leicester Square Theatre or Hen and Chickens or the Camden Head, or come down if you can?" And then other times it's agents saying, "Hey, we're doing the United Agents Comedy Showcase next week. Come down." So yeah, it's a mix really of individuals and agents. But yeah, and we've got a big team, and so someone often can make it. And actually what's happening nowadays is people are going, here's a link to me doing my set at the King Gong at the Comedy Store and not getting gonged off after 5 minutes.
That's the key.
Or this is me doing 10 minutes at this gig that I filmed. So, and then it's on YouTube and people are sending that out. So that's also quite useful to watch.
Yeah, definitely. You said like the best bit about live stand-up is the immediate reaction. And obviously social media has sort of given you that immediacy for TV, not in the same way, but in a much more immediate way than you've ever had. Obviously, there are a lot of shows now that make specific feeds for their shows. How are you coping with that change as a company? But also, how are you finding that is impacting on what you're creating or what you're doing with creations as they sort of find their feed? Yeah,
social media is interesting because I don't think it's necessarily impacted on our programs that we make. What it means is it just means that all of the producers and writers and performers that have incredibly low self-esteem, that used to just have to have that battered by reviewers and critics, now get it 1,000 times from people on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook. So I suppose from that respect, I'm not on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. I'm not on any of those things. And when a show of mine comes out, someone who might be would say, "Oh, have you seen on Facebook people are really loving your show," or someone's said this really hateful thing about your show, and I don't engage in it, and I don't, because it doesn't really matter to me, like, is the truth about a sort of opinion about the show. Well, if they don't like it, obviously I want to know if they like it. But does it influence what we're developing? Not really. I mean, we might, have I got news for you? We have a live Twitter feed for that, but we don't really do much in the way of, a show's going out live and we're going to interact with our audience online or stuff like that. We haven't really done that. Social media doesn't have much impact, I'd say, really. I'm just thinking, it doesn't really have much impact. I know it's pretty disappointing for everyone of your audience that are going, but it doesn't really do much, really.
Okay, that's reasonable. Yeah. Does that mean that, given that there's so many more channels and so many more online opportunities, do you now expect less viewers on shows just because the attention pool is more spread?
Yeah, I think viewing figures have gone down. Like when there was, didn't Noel's House Party used to get like 23 million viewers or something?
I watched it. I didn't keep track of the numbers.
Because there was like 4 channels. Whereas now, what would get 23 million viewers? I don't know. If Donald Trump did fire a nuclear bomb at North Korea, that might get 23 million viewers, and then instantly they'd all switch off. The World Cup final, if England were in it, might get 20 million viewers. Those Strictly Come Dancings and the Britain's Got Talents getting 10 million, 15 million. Planet Earth 2 got 10 million the other night. Comedy-wise, even successful shows aren't getting many viewing figures. A million, I'd say if you've got 1 million now on Channel 4, BBC 2, that's deemed as doing very well. Because it's not just there are more channels. I think also what you have is more ways to watch stuff. So you might not watch BBC 2 at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night to watch the new series of W1A. You might wait till it's all gone out and then watch 6 episodes back to back on iPlayer. Or you might wait till it's on Netflix and watch it all on Netflix if they buy it, or 4OD have their service. So there's just so many different ways to watch stuff now. So the viewing figures are, they're a bit misleading really in many ways, I suppose.
Do you take that into account when you're like developing a show? Say you develop something for Channel 4 and you knew that was going to be on 4OD an hour later or a few hours later or whatever it would be. Do you take into account that it's going to be viewed on a different medium than the original one that you maybe historically intended it to be on? Or do you even change a show slightly because it's going to be viewed differently?
No, I think we always just think we're making a TV show. It might be played on an SVOD at some point, or an FVOD, the free video on demand. Basically, the BBC and Channel 4 are free, aren't they? Because they're from those channels. But SVOD is when you subscribe, Netflix, Amazon. No, I think we just imagine we're making it to play on a television like we've always done. Yeah. No, is the truth. I used to think, people watch stuff on their mobile phones. Maybe we shouldn't have intricate, close-up shots that are too hard to see on a mobile phone. But I don't think that matters, actually. I think the quality of cameras now is so good. You can film most things and it look quite good, whether it's on a small screen or a large screen. So, I don't think that really affects our development of a programme, no.
We were talking a little bit ago about the link between sort of your live night that became Hat-Trick's live night in a way, and then but the link in general between a production company or a TV channel and the live circuit. Do you think there should be more of a link, or do you think it's sort of, because they're such different disciplines, there's a reason why, for example, you don't go to nights, but you wouldn't go to a night to look for a script, you'd wait for it to come in?
Yeah, I think we do go and see a lot of live comedy, and when I'm at comedy nights, I normally see a couple of other producers, maybe a commissioner there as well. So I do, people are going to see these shows, but they are two different mediums, aren't they? Live comedy and television is very different, and the people that are mainly writing comedy shows on television are writers, and the people performing stand-up are mainly stand-ups, and they're two different art forms. And I've tried to develop so many shows with stand-up comedians in the past and got them to write a script, and they just can't because they write stand-up material. Writing a script is writing a really tight half-hour comedy or comedy drama is a very special skill, and it's not very easy. And not everyone can do it, which is why you end up often pairing the stand-ups with the writers that have got the proven track record of writing comedy. We also develop books here, but the person that writes the book might not be the person that writes the script. So it's the same thing. Writing a novel and writing a script are different forms of expression. So stand-up's no different, really.
Can writing a script, like a half-hour script, be taught then?
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah, I think there are courses you can go on, for example, and you can watch programmes and listen to a Radio 4 show and see how that's, you can hear, because you're not watching the actors and stuff like that, you're just listening to the words. That's the script. You're literally hearing the script in its rawest form there.
Does Hat-Trick do a course or anything like that?
No, we don't run any courses. I mean, there are script writing. I mean, you can go to university and do a script writing course, can't you? MA in script writing.
But you've just said don't go to university.
But I also said I wouldn't, go to university.
No, I just wondered if there are any people or facilities that you know of that you would recommend for maybe a listener who has never written anything but has an idea but kind of is struggling a bit.
I mean, maybe it's to get on a script writing course. I don't know where you would go and do that. There must be colleges or universities that do them in the evenings and as part-time. Get hold of some scripts. Read some good scripts. I'm sure that there are some available on the internet.
The BBC Writers' Room has loads.
BBC Writers' Room has loads. Yeah, exactly. Read some. I mean, if you befriend a producer, ask them if you can read something they're developing, or because what you want to do is you want to read good scripts. And I'm not saying the Writers' Room doesn't have good scripts, but you want to read the good. You want to read an episode of The Office because you know that did well and why it was successful, and You want to read an episode of Mrs. Brown's Boys and Catastrophe, and read as many different types of scripts as you can to see how it's done.
Do you have an example of a show that you really believed in, that you pushed really hard, that just couldn't get made because of a factor?
Loads.
Do you have one that you could like just an example of something that you just had to give up on? Not give up on, but like it just wasn't going to happen, and the reasons why.
We were developing something for BBC Three once. We did 2 read-throughs of this project with some young actors in it. It was fantastic. It was more of a comedy drama vibe, but at the time the controller of BBC Three loved it. He then left. He commissioned a pilot but left. Then the new controller came in and it wasn't for them. And so the show didn't happen. That's one example of why a show might not happen, because there's a changing of the guard of who's in charge and it's not their taste. We've developed other things in the past where an actor might have done a pilot and then decided they don't want to do the series. And then the channel has said, well, we want that actor or it's not happening. So that's not happened. We've done I'm trying to think of other sort of pilot, other reasons why things don't happen. Often it's just the execution hasn't worked out how you expected it to. Yeah, I mean, that's some examples there.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know legitimate reasons as to why things might not happen.
Yeah.
And would you tell them? Would you tell the writer, this, we've done all the reviews, the reason it hasn't happened is because the commission has changed or something like that? Or would you say they've gone another way? Like how?
No, definitely.
You just say
they're not going to lie. Yeah, no, tell them the truth, definitely, and say, this is why this isn't happening now. And it's hard. It's a hard conversation to make. It's a phone call to make when you have to tell someone their program isn't happening now, but have to do it more often than not.
I'm sure.
And because very rarely do you actually get to pilot stage, more often than not, you're just getting turned down at script stage. So yeah, at all sort of levels of potential knockback, you absolutely tell them the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we went from so how many scripts do you reckon you would get in a week?
Well, I can say answer that question because I'm currently reading a load from last week, and I think my inbox from last week has 9. 9. Okay. And how many? So if we extrapolate that, and let's say 10, just for a round number. Okay.
So let's say 520 over a year.
Yeah. God.
And then and you would read all of those?
I would try to. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how many of those would you get back to as many?
I reply to every single one of them. Definitely, okay. I reply to it. But that's one of my biggest bugbears. Actually, is if someone doesn't reply to you.
And you'd give notes. You wouldn't just say this is shit.
Do you know what? More often than not, so let's say it's 500 scripts a year. I would absolutely read every single one of them. I might not finish every single one of them. Okay, so I would know from reading them. By a certain point in that script, I would know this isn't my taste, which is a big thing, or I would know we can't do this because it's on us. We've got something similar on our slate, or there's something in production at a channel that we can't do because it's too similar. And actually, very rarely do I have that 500. I would say in a year, I probably want to develop 3.
Right.
It's probably the truth. Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of scripts last week. I think let's do the maths a bit better. Let's say actually I'm reading 200. Let's say I'm reading 200 scripts a year. Of that 200, I'd probably say, yeah, maybe let's just say, just for the sake of argument, 150 aren't my taste. That leaves 50. Mm-hmm. Of those 50, say some of them have been done before. Say 25 have been done before or already in production somewhere. That leaves 25 more. Of that 25, I'll share with the team. Of that 25, that maybe the team don't all agree with me on like 10 of them, so that leaves 15. Of those 15, I meet the writers. Of those 15 writers that I meet, maybe they decide to go out to another production company, or I don't get on, for me. That leaves 5. Maybe I end up working on those 5. So from that's probably more realistic actually, numbers wise.
And then going forward from that, how many on an average year of those 5 would get a sign off or a thumbs up or even a pilot from a channel?
Well, I'd like to hope that all of them would get picked up by a channel into some form of development, which might mean a second script or read through. But of that lot to get a pilot, I mean, you'd hope that a couple of them would. Quite
low chances in a nice way. It's quite a hard, because I knew it was hard, but that even on numbers is an intense mountain for someone to even.
It's hard, and I'm one of 5-6 producers in our department.
So they're also reading 200, or would you email each other and go, I've got that script, I've already started reading it, or do you just all read it anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much other people get sent, but we do get sent a lot of scripts, and that's just Hat Trick. Obviously, there's Objective and Tiger and all these other production companies. So yeah, the numbers are low, but look how many slots there actually are. Look how much comedy is being made. Comedy is in a place right now where it's not high end drama. It's not the Night Manager. High end dramas that you can do with co-pros. It's not daytime quick to make, fact empty stuff. Docky stuff, which is cheap. It sort of sits in that middle ground, which has low viewing figures and not, but still needs quite a lot of money. So it's very risky for a broadcaster. So you're still ending up with, less slots, therefore, because it's so risky to make comedy.
I'm going to just do the quick fire last questions. That's okay.
Okay.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they are sending you scripts?
They spell my name wrong or call me.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dear Mike.
Dear Mike. I don't think I've ever done that, but I'm going to do that every time now.
Yeah, dear Mike. Just getting my name wrong. That's like, if you can't get my name right, then yeah, yeah.
Is there another guy in the department called Mike?
No.
I'm trying to find you an excuse, guys.
No.
Okay. No, go on. What are the actual bare bones mistakes that people do in scripts? Is it the formatting? Is it just the style? What would you say are the mistakes you always see?
I read a lot of scripts that are about struggling writers. There's a lot of them about, and that's just a hard sell. What's the big? I don't know. I think people people seem to be quite proficient at writing scripts. Even the unsolicited writers, everyone, people have a rough idea of how to put a script together. What's the biggest mistake? I don't know. That's a really difficult one because they range from people not knowing my name, spelling my name right at the start of an email, or they range from someone not having planned out the series, or I don't know. It's difficult to say really that.
Okay.
I know these are quick fire answers, and that wasn't a quick fire answer.
That's fine. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions people have about what you do?
Me personally?
Yeah, your job or your job in general in the industry.
I'd say that it's just that they think that if I want to develop something, that probably they think that it's going to be on TV. That I'm not a commissioner. I don't run a TV channel. I develop TV shows to try and sell them, and if they get bought, then we make them. But I don't buy TV shows. I try to make them and sell them.
What do you think is the biggest problem in the TV industry, and how would you go about solving it?
The biggest problem in the TV industry, and how would I go about solving it? God, where do you start there? Lack of risk taking. How would I solve it? Take more risks.
Is that from channels or from you guys at production houses? Or
I'd say it's from channels, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Because a lot of other people have said the similar thing, where they've said, I wish people would take more risks. But then, do you take less risks sending them less risky scripts because you know what they're after as well? So they're seeing less things to take risks on?
No, we're in a fortunate position though at Hat Trick because we're a production company, so we get sent lots of ideas. Me alone, like I'm saying, I'm getting sent 200 ideas a year. So I can send a less risky, Hat Trick can send a less risky idea to the BBC and a risky idea to the BBC. Right. If you're a writer who's just come up with one idea that year or two ideas that year, and they're both risky, whereas we've got 200 to choose from. So yeah, I'd say the more risks that can be taken, then the more of those sort of writers that are making those risks have a chance. Okay.
Who do you think is the most underrated person in the TV industry?
The most underrated person in the TV? What, other than me?
Who's the second most underrated?
I would just say, in general, the writers are the most underrated person in TV. And that's like the collective noun for the writers. Because without them, there'd be no ideas. Unless you're a superstar writer, they don't get massive amounts of money in this country, and they're often, it's hard being a writer. So I'd say the most underrated person in the industry are writers.
Okay, last question. If you could go back to yourself when you were starting out and give yourself one bit of advice that would have helped you in your career, what would that be?
Be nice to writers. No. Be nice to the poor writers. Don't take it personally. Just do your best, because I think sometimes I used to think that if a show wasn't happening or wasn't good enough, that'd be my fault. But actually, it's a team effort. And as long as you do your best and everyone's doing their best, that's what you can do.
That was Mark. As I said, I've sort of held this one for the end of the year because I thought it would be such a good one to end on. I'm so proud of how this one came out and how honest and open and amazingly frank he was with some of his answers. It was so good, and I loved it, and it was a joy to put together. Thank you so much, Mark, and if you've had a good time and if you've enjoyed this, please tweet. Well, you can't tweet him because he doesn't have any social media. Tweet me at This Made Me Cool, and I will send him screenshots and links to your tweets. I won't give you his email. You're not having his email to email him. But yeah, he was amazing, and for me, obviously, I know how hard it is to break into TV, but I love how open he was about just how luck and timing often play such a big part in you even getting anywhere on TV, and the changes in society and how they reflect in TV and how long they take to come through, and it was just amazing. I really loved it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. I do a new one every 2 weeks. If you are new here, that's the best way of keeping track of the podcast. If you're old here, please do consider giving us an honest review on iTunes. The new year is just around the corner, and we're still just a few off getting 100 reviews by the end of the year. Can you help me hit that target? If you can, please do. I really, really want to hit 100 reviews by the end of 2017. So please go in there and give it an honest review. 100 good reviews, by the way. Don't just go there and give it a 1 star. Like 100 good reviews. Outside of that, it's Christmas. And it's actually my birthday, or at least it was 2 days ago. If you want to give me a slightly belated birthday present / early Christmas present, I'd love a donation. If you thought this podcast was worth anything, put a monetary value on it and sling it my way. It could either be on PayPal if you just want to do a one-off donation, or you can become a patron from $1 an episode. Was that worth $1? Do you think this podcast is worth donating $2 a month to? Just one for each episode. I do 2 episodes a month. Do you think it's worth that? If it was, please sign up. Patreon.com/RC Industry Podcast. That's the end of the podcast for this year. I'll be back the first Friday of January. If you need some more content to listen to, may I please highly recommend my other podcast, which is called The Audio Time Capsule. It's where I bring on one guest, I get them to ask themselves 20 questions, and then a year later I get them to come back on and answer those questions. I then edit it so they are talking to their past self. Please go and listen to it. I'm so proud of it. I think you're going to love it. It's the most intricate and high concept podcast I've done, and I think that I've found in a while. It's so long term and it's so logistically a nightmare. I would appreciate it if you went and downloaded it and gave it a chance. There are links in the show notes. They're also on my website. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you donate more than $5, you can buy my book. I've got a book. It's called How to Make a Living by Working for Free. It's all about building a community around your free content and how to build those connections online and then hopefully get them to support you. So if you're thinking about supporting me, buy that, and not only are you supporting me, you're also improving the book, and then you're getting a copy of it to help your own projects. So give that a whirl. It's £5 for a digital copy, or it's £8 for a paperback copy, and I've still got a few paperbacks. So if you'd like some more, please do that. I can't guarantee Christmas delivery because it's in 3 days, and I guarantee that Christmas delivery is going to be backlogged. But if you want the digital one, it's Amazon, and it'll be on your Kindle or whatever device you want it on within seconds. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you very much for donating if you do, and I'll see you all in about 14 days' time. The RC Industry Podcast is a Fruit That Got in Gravity's Way production for the internet. All elements were created by me, comedian Simon Caine. Bye.